Hi, my name's Lisa Persine. I'm an energy management analyst in the Conservation Resources Division on the Commercial Retrofit team. Today, I'm going to go over our Energy Smart Services program, discuss Seattle City Light incentives and the contract process, and give you a really brief overview of the Seattle City Light funding workbook. Most of the information I'm going to give you right now is if you actually called me on the phone, and we're going to talk about these details. So this is a phone call to your energy management analyst. The Energy Smart Services program encourages customers to purchase more efficient equipment by paying for the incremental cost of higher efficiency options. For each project that we look at, we're going to determine the baseline for each project. So we're going to look at the existing lighting and control system, the annual operating hours for each space, and the heating and cooling code, which is something in our workbook, which is basically which type of HVAC system you have. Seattle City Light's incentives are based on first-year kWh savings, and they're capped at 70 to 77% of the project cost. Like we've kind of been drilling today, it's important to remember to contact Seattle City Light before you start a project. The contract must be in place with the customer and Seattle City Light before the equipment is purchased or installed. We don't provide incentives for any retroactive projects. So if you've purchased materials or the project's completed, Seattle City Light can't provide any funding. Okay, so this PowerPoint is actually not, sorry. Okay. There are two types of incentive structures for lighting, simple rebates and standard incentives. For the medium and large commercial program, our simple rebates for lighting are on occupancy sensors. Wall and ceiling mounted sensors are $30 each and $90 each. Our standard incentives are where the funding levels are determined by standardized calculations used in our funding calculation workbook, which I'll touch on at the end of the presentation. On our website, energysmartservices.com, you'll see our current workbooks for medium and large commercial lighting, our lighting specifications, which are basically the type of lighting that you need to install to qualify for incentives for our programs, and the current incentive levels. So I apologize, this PowerPoint is not exactly matching up with what I have, but let me see if I can find that chart. No, it's not in there. So there's a slide that's not in here, but basically it's a chart of all our incentives. And we have different incentive levels depending on the measure type. So for hardwired fixtures, we offer 23 cents per kWh saved. If you're installing an LED fixture, it's 23 cents per kWh saved plus a 10% bonus, which actually equals 25.3 cents. So we give a little bit of extra money for installing an LED fixture. For screw-in or twist-in lamps, it's 17 cents per kWh saved. Again, LEDs get a 10% bonus, so it knocks it up to 18.7 cents per kWh saved. Lighting controls, 23 cents per kWh saved, and again, that's calculated savings, and that's done in our workbook. Direct load reduction, 2 cents to 11 cents, depending on if you're removing lamps or fixtures. I'm going to go over our actual contract process. Let's say you're working with a customer and they want to move forward with the project, and you want to secure funding from Seattle City Light. So the customer needs to sign an agreement with Seattle City Light. Agreement, contract, we kind of interchange those words. So the first step in the process is for you guys, the contractor, to fill out our workbook, which we call the funding calculation worksheets. You're going to fill out that workbook, you're going to submit it to somebody like me. I'm going to review it for completeness, accuracy, see if there's any like mistakes that are just popping out. And then we're going to schedule a pre-inspection with the customer. And we want you to accompany us to that visit so we can talk to the customer. We'll talk about the program, make sure everybody's on the same page. And we're going to look at that workbook that we have and make sure we captured everything and just that the information is correct. So now everything's looking good. You're going to send us cut sheets for maybe the LED lamps you're installing, maybe the fluorescent hardwire fixtures you're installing. We're going to get some cut sheets for the ballast and the actual lamps, maybe some occupancy sensors. And then we're going to finalize the scope of work. And this is the information that's going to be included in the agreement and the contract. And our agreement and contract is going to detail the Seattle City Light funding levels so everybody knows how much they're getting from us, the project cost, and we're going to know the project cost because you're going to give us a cost quote for materials and the labor. We're going to know how much kWh they're saving. Any specific project specifications are going to be included in that agreement for the customer to review. And doing all this basically secures funding for 3 years at our current incentive levels. Even more details, now what happens is we're going to mail 2 copies of that agreement to the customer. They're going to sign it, and they're going to send it back to Seattle City Light. And once we get that signed contract back, you guys can start the work. When everything's completed, the customer's going to call us and say, hey, the work's completed, please come by. We're going to stop by. Hopefully you guys will also come with us. We're going to verify that everything matches that scope of work in the contract. Everything looks good. We have a final invoice. And within 30 business days, the customer receives their check from Seattle City Light. Okay. Now, we have a slightly new workbook, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because this isn't an active Excel spreadsheet, but we do have a spreadsheet that you guys will use to enter in your information. I can't really read this, but basically this is the startup page. This is the first page that's going to come up when you go in our workbook, and you're going to fill out basic facility information. What's the project you're working on, your name, your company, your phone number, and then you're going to see here what's your scope of work. There's a drop-down menu right over here, and it's going to ask you if you're installing lamps and ballasts. You're going to check yes. Are you doing occupancy sensors? You're going to check no. If you don't know exactly what you're doing, that's okay. You can always go back and fix something, but that's just kind of getting an idea of the project. And then over here, you're going to see program selection, and Art mentioned the 3 minutes. Art mentioned the common area lighting program. You're going to check no on that because we're actually talking about the Energy Smart Services program, which is commercial retrofit for medium and large commercial buildings. I'm going to go a little bit quicker. This is our application. The customer is supposed to fill this out. This basically gets them in our system, lets us know that they're interested in working with us, and we really like to have this before we go out and do a site visit. We just want to get the customers, not a confirmation that they're doing the project, but that they're generally interested. This is the Fixture Count tab page. Again, it's part of our workbook, but this is like all the details. What is existing in the building? Hours of operation, what are you proposing, what's the cost, all that kind of good stuff. And then what happens with all that information, it gets put on our project summary page. Here's what Seattle City Light's estimated incentive is, and here's some other financial information, return on investment, simple payback, incentive percentages and all that kind of stuff. This workbook gets included in the contract with some contract language, so the customer will have already seen it, you will already have seen it, but this is pretty much what we're mailing them. Do we have time for questions, or just
You got a minute?
a minute for questions? Anybody? Over there?
Wait, hold on a sec. Scott's going to get your mic, so wherever we get here.
So if I were to bring my project to you and we went through the worksheet, do you then take that and make recommendations to actually increase the power savings and increase the incentive?
Sure. What we could do is if you
Lisa,
filled,
if you could be a
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
If you filled out this workbook when we meet on site, it's going to be a guide for us, and we're going to tweak it. And maybe there's a space that was missed, or maybe instead of installing a CFL in this space, LEDs might work better. Seattle City Light doesn't recommend products. We don't design anything, but when we see things traditionally done and they've worked well, and maybe that's not the choice that you decided, we can just kind of let you know what has happened and worked in other projects. But yeah, our goal is to capture as much savings as possible. Whether it be you thought maybe you wanted to do T12 to a 32-watt T8, and say temperature is not an issue in that space, maybe you could use a 25-watt T8, like something like that.
Thank you.